It's number 3. Head on into the wall at 190 miles an hour. And Earnhardt is on his feet.
He made the grass a skating rink, and Stacy's car slid all the way to the dirt embankment, flipped over it, and amazingly landed on its wheels in Lake Lloyd.
You're gasping for air, nothing happens. Trying to stay focused on staying conscious was ultimately scary.
This series, Moments in NASCAR Where Time Froze, has been one of my favorite series that I've made for all of you to enjoy. Although NASCAR is by no means a scary sport, there have been plenty of moments throughout its history where terrifying moments have happened. Talking about these topics can be very important as it can show how dangerous racing can be at that sort of speed, as well as show how important safety can be in the sport. With that said, I feel like the videos took a turn that were a bit too extreme for a platform like YouTube, as I felt like I was showing clips to glorify racing violence, which is a route that should have never been taken. Because of this, I want to continue this series, but rather than look like I'm glorifying incidents themselves, I want to show tributes to how far NASCAR safety has come with incidents that should have ended in a different outcome. So with that said, it is time to settle into some more incidents where each passing second felt like an eternity, and look at moments in NASCAR where time froze. The NASCAR Goody's Dash series was an inexpensive series that stuck around the sport for almost 30 years. The series immediately gained the interest of many thanks to the small price tag of the vehicles and simplistic rulebook to enter into the series. Throughout the years, many drivers came and went, duking it out in their compact sedans, trying to make it to the finish line and win the small purses that came with it. Sure, no teams were ever going to make money running in the so-called Baby Grand National Series, but it was fun and something that allowed up-and-coming drivers to race in the sport. The only issue was with this inexpensive series was that since the pricing to run a car was low, the safety was subpar compared to NASCAR's top series. Throughout the years, there were unfortunate incidents in testing sessions and races themselves that drivers would lose their lives in the 1980s and 90s. Because of these tragic losses, NASCAR had no choice but to bump up the expenses, which led to stronger engines, but most importantly, safety in the cars. For the most part, the Goody's Dash series appeared only at short tracks. However, at the beginning of the season, the series would start the same as all the others in Daytona Speed Weeks at Daytona International Speedway. In 1999, the series was still strong with over 65 entries for the season opener, meaning that speed was essential for making the show. Because of this, teams were now pushing their cars to the 160 mph mark, which in hindsight doesn't sound like much in NASCAR standards, but for this entry-level series, that was hitting a level where the cars were being pushed to the absolute limit. Throughout the race, many accidents would happen in the event, some tame while others were pretty extreme. It was no secret that every single lap, NASCAR's Goody Dash series were being pushed to the absolute limit. But little did the racing world know that the ultimate test for the cars would happen with just 5 laps to go in the 1999 event.
Just time by, 5 fingers signifying 5 laps to go in one car. It's just tumbling end over end, side over side. That is Danny Bagwell's car, number 10. And look like all the wheels there. Is that 3 wheels I see on the apron of the racetrack?
That's the rear end housing laying right there beside of it.
That's a Ford Escort. That's one of the new ZX2 Escorts. And now he lays down on the racetrack after that wild flip.
Just happy to be out of there right now.
He laid down and said, thank God, is exactly what he did.
Going into the tri-oval, a driver by the name of Danny Bagwell would hit the outside retaining wall and send his number 10 Pontiac into a violent flip. Sheet metal, tires, axles, almost everything was flying off the car before it finally came to a rest right next to the entrance of pit road. Time was freezing over the racetrack, as many feared that although the cars in the series were keeping drivers protected for the most part, there seemed to be little chance that an accident like this was able to duplicate the same outcome. But as cameras zoomed in at the once number 10 stock car, people saw Danny Bagwell not only alive in the car, but attempting to climb out of the torn race car by himself. As he laid resting on the track pavement, He, as well as everyone around the world, felt immediate relief knowing that the driver escaped serious injuries. The car was shredded to pieces, but only a bump on an ankle was the extent of injuries that the driver suffered from the incident, proving to everyone that even though this series did not have the most money being thrown at it, safety was still at a high importance as the roll cages did their job to protect the driver. Bagwell would be known as a longtime veteran of the series, winning 4 championships all the way up to the series conclusion in 2011, making him one of the best to compete in the series. Overall, we can be glad that he was able to accomplish this feat by surviving what has to be one of the most violent wrecks seen in a Goody Dash Series event. Track openings have made plenty of appearances in this series. With the wall at an awkward angle, it can lead to some of the most brutal incidents that can be seen in a NASCAR event. Which begs the question, why are they there to begin with? As crazy as this may sound, this is one of the safest ways the interior wall can be placed around the racetrack for everyone in the infield area. A couple decades back, bigger tracks such as Daytona, Talladega, and Pocono preferred to use guardrail rather than concrete for the interior walls on the racetrack, a procedure that was definitely more cost effective but not without its consequences for lack of safety. As seen in the evolution of safety with NASCAR's walls, guardrails can become almost worthless if the right amount of speed and force is applied to the wall. This has been seen in NASCAR's earlier days when the guardrails on the outer part of the racetrack would give out once drivers made impacts into the wall. Soon many tracks followed suit with changing the outer walls, however the inner walls were mostly kept the same. I mean, what were the chances of a car having enough speed to go through the inside wall of a racetrack? Cue in one of the most beloved drivers at one of the most infamous racetracks in NASCAR history. In the 1994 Winston Select 500, tensions were already high at the famous Talladega Superspeedway as the form of draft racing was starting to become one of the most exciting but scarier types of racing. Near the beginning of the race, many drivers were jockeying for position, hoping to be at the front of the pack when the big one would occur. One of the drivers in the mix was Mark Martin, a driver who at this point was known as a championship contender in the NASCAR Cup Series. All he needed was some luck on his side in this race if he was going to stay toe-to-toe for the championship against the 2 strongest competitors that season, Dale Earnhardt and Ernie Irvan. Well, on lap 102, Mark Martin was definitely lucky, but not in the way he was hoping to be.
Look at Mark. No brakes.
Going through the tri-oval, contact would be made between the number 77 of Greg Sachs and the number 75 of Top Bodine. Mark Martin was tagged by a loose Jeff Burton, sending his number 6 Valvoline machine into the inside guardrail. At first, it looked like the impact was going to be rough, depending on how the car was going to hit the guardrail. But instead, Mark Martin's car would jump over the wall and continue down the infield. Luckily, the second guardrail would stop the car from going any further, as just a few hundred feet away laid spectators watching the event from the infield. The fans looked to be shaken by the incident, but when they saw the kid himself climb out of the car basically unscathed, a sigh of relief was felt around the 2.67-mile racetrack. Mark Martin was okay, although he said it was one of the most helpless feelings he ever had in a race car. NASCAR would immediately make alterations to the inside of the racetrack by applying extra reinforcement in the area to eliminate any chance of something like this to ever happen again. By 1995, all the grass would be taken out in favor of pavement wrapping around all the way into Turn 1, something that I'm sure that Mark Martin is happy to see be changed. The catch fence is one of the greatest add-ons to racetracks when it comes to protecting the fans. This prevents sheet metal and parts from hitting spectators when an incident happens. There could honestly be a whole list of times where the catch fence was able to save thousands of lives from debris entering the grandstands. Some of the biggest ones that stand out is the 1987 Talladega incident where Bobby Allison went into the catch fence after a blown tire. There is also 2009, where Carl Edwards was uprooted after contact with Brad Keselowski in the tri-oval towards the cross finish line, or even the incident with Jeffrey Bodine when his truck flew into the fence but not one spectator lost their life that fateful day. As amazing as catch fences have been for spectators, as seen in the final mention, the same cannot be said for the amount of damage a fence can cause on the vehicle itself. From every perspective, Jeffrey Bodine's crash is one of the most brutal in NASCAR history. The fact that he made it out alive was a huge testament to safety. With that said, there is one incident that I need to mention that happened in the Xfinity series where not only the driver survived the intense incident, but also walked away under his own power when it was all said and done. In the 2022 inaugural race of the season for the Xfinity Series, Myatt Snider was piloting Jordan Anderson's number 31 car in the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. On the final lap of the event, it looked like Myatt was going to be able to score a top 10 for the newly formed Xfinity Series team. But as most Xfinity races go, many drivers got extremely antsy on the final lap, meaning that this race was going to have one more wreck before it was all said and done. And unfortunately for Myatt Snider, he was going to be the main attraction of the final incident.
Austin Hill in the 21. Big crash. Up and over. Caution is out.
That's just a bad scenario. Once you get turned around backwards, if he doesn't get hit in the front end, it probably doesn't get airborne, but it's just you got that other car wedging underneath the front to get the lift there. Wow. I mean, look at that car.
And look at the grass that's flying in front of him.
Where's the engine?
Oh,
Wow.
the engine's gone.
In what has to be one of the most brutal wrecks in Xfinity Series history, Myatt Snider would get spun by a charging Anthony Alfredo in the number 23. Myatt was clearly not ready for the push down the back straightaway and would go head on into the outside retaining wall. If it wasn't bad enough for the Charlotte native, Jade Buford collided with the spinning car, sending it up into the air and into the catch fence. Just like Jeffrey Bodine's Truck Series crash, the car would shred into pieces and burst into flames, breaking apart, leaving just the roll cage and some of the racing tires. As cameras moved in towards the destroyed race car, Myatt Snider was already moving and trying to get out of the car under his own power. It was an incredible sight to witness, as during the replays of the crash, the commentators in the booth were at a loss for words by how bad the car was damaged, proving to the world that the Xfinity Series cars have become one of the safest race cars in professional racing. Myatt would be credited with the 22nd position in that race, and looked at by many as one of the luckiest drivers after being able to walk away from a crash that was one of the worst in Daytona history. The world of motorsports is an exciting one, and as the years go by, it gets more and more intense as new drivers and cars come into the sport. Luckily for us, safety runs along with the advancement of the sport, as well as racing organizations continually working on making motorsports safer for everyone involved. That way, when we see moments like the ones we saw tonight, sure, they will freeze in time in NASCAR infamy. However, we can rest easy as more often than not, drivers can walk away from terrifying incidents such as these entries. So until then guys, race hard, stay safe, and as always, you all, take care.